house this morning. Feels weird teaching Sunday school. I thought I was going to teach Brother Joseph and the teens, so I especially made a lesson for them. Just kidding. I'll get my Bible and electronic devices all set up here. We're based mostly in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, so we're going to end up there, but our first verse, kind of introduction verse, is Proverbs 27:14. And that's a verse you're pretty familiar with. Brother Joe recently preached on this verse. I don't know why, but it's pretty common that we somehow accidentally, end up preaching or teaching on the same things pretty often, more often than you would think. It would be random, I think that sometimes the Lord wants you to hear things more than once, just because that's how we learn. We learn through repetition sometimes. And so, Greenlee's already in protest over that, and I'm sorry, Brandon, but I disagree. I think we do need repetition sometimes. It's hard to teach when people are protesting and getting up and leaving. If they don't agree with what you say. Unfortunately, there's nobody here to video me, so I can say what I want. No, the last time I preached, what was it, like a month ago? And they videoed me, and I went home from church after, we ate lunch, and that afternoon I already started getting texts from people that I had offended. And they were right. One of them was my sister, because I poked fun at her because she pulled out in front of an ambulance. And I don't even remember what the point was of the whole thing. I didn't plan on using that as an illustration, but at one point she got a ticket for pulling out in front of an ambulance, I thought, but I got set right. What happened was she was just going through a green light, and an ambulance with its lights on was running the red light, which is their right to run the red light, obviously. Suzanne just didn't see him or hit him, so the ambulance actually hit her, but she got the ticket. And so it was really kind of not fair, because really the emergency vehicles that are going through red lights, they're supposed to slow down, make sure nobody's coming through, and then proceed. So I don't know what the nature of the call was, but anyways, I think I kind of hurt her feelings, and so I said it right. It was not her fault. I put it on public video YouTube record. My sister was innocent and undeserving of not only my criticism, but the ticket that she got. So if I was her, I would protest that to the highest levels. And so I realized, though, that I was kind of rude about it too. It's like, yeah, one time she pulled out in front of me and who does that, And then upon listening and thinking about how I said, it was kind of hurtful the way I said it. And at the time, I had no idea, no clue at all that I was being rude. But I was. Afterwards, I was kind of cringing at how hurtful that I said that. Because I love my sister. She's the greatest sister ever. I'm not saying this for the benefit of YouTube, because hopefully she'll watch this later. But there's not a sweeter person that you will ever meet than my sister. She's the most wonderful. In our family, there's 3 boys and a girl. Somehow she got all of the good personality traits, all the good looks, and all the intelligence on all of it. And then us boys were left with the scraps, the worst of both of our parents put together. Like rudeness is what I got apparently. But so anyway, she didn't deserve my means. Then I realized later in the sermon, I was talking about tornadoes. We had those storms about a month ago, and I said that our across the street neighbor offered if we're going to have a tornado warning, that I could go across, and their garage is one of those things you can open up and you walk down the little kind of a cellar in the garage type situation. But then he said something like, but it might be tight in there, but we could all still be safe. And then I thought in my head, I was kind of invited, but then sort of unofficially uninvited too, because I don't want to make it too tight in there. But then I thought later, upon listening to what I said, that was really pretty rude to say that, because I was, his intentions were good and to be friendly and neighborly, and I really don't think he meant to uninvite me by saying it would be tight. I think he was just talking and being friendly and and saying, but I think he's a Christian, so, because I friended him on Facebook, and he's said some encouraging things that, quote scripture, stuff like that I know is saved. But what if he wasn't even saved, and then he saw that somehow and watched that and saw me being kind of rude about what he said, That would really hurt my chance to ever be a good influence on him and a good testimony. And then there was something else, I can't even remember it. Man, I was rude 2 or 3 times. And the whole sermon was supposed to be on being encouraging, in these hard times. Let's keep our chin up, and the Lord is our refuge. But during that little short sermon, I was really rude to people without even realizing at all that I was being like that 2 or 3 times. So I had to go around apologizing, especially to my sister. I didn't apologize to the other person. I don't think they ever saw it, but I had to apologize to God for it. When you're up here preaching, it's really pretty sorry, to use that during an illustration or whatever to be rude to somebody. And it really convicted me about that. It really bothered me that I would be like that. To have the honor of standing behind the pulpit and having the job of taking God's word and trying to express it, explain it, encourage people with it, or whatever, the goal is that day to do, and then to use it like that really is pretty bad, and it was really convicting to me. So I decided I'm going to try never to do that again. So Brother Sonny, if I do that, it's your job, since you're the uploader to YouTube, to edit out any rudeness, or else you do not have my permission to load it to YouTube. I need an editor, seriously. He's my fact checker and now my editor of rudeness. And so today we're still in our Bible series.
Brother Mark.
Yes, sir.
I didn't get any rudeness out of your
You
message.
didn't? Okay. Well, I
thought it was a great message.
Well, thank you, Brother Eugene.
Yeah.
You weren't my sister that got personally attacked during it.
Well, maybe.
But really, I lied about my sister. I don't think I ever got the whole story, and I didn't understand that she was just going through a red light. I thought she pulled out in front of an ambulance, And to me, it's like, how do you pull out in front of an ambulance? It's a lot, and a lot of times these days, the reason is people don't see them is because they're playing music loud, or whatever. I don't hardly ever listen to music. Not hardly ever, but not very much in my truck. For one thing, a mouse or rat chewed through my antenna on my radio. So I can only put things like on my phone and play them, or every once in a while the satellite radio will give me a free month of satellite. Usually I'll listen to NFL news or something like that. But I like listening to podcasts or audio books sometimes, but it's usually not music. But people are listening to stuff so loud, a lot of times they don't hear the emergency vehicles, and that's a big problem. So I was thinking that's what happened, but anyways, it wasn't. She was pretty much, but I appreciate the words of encouragement. But then I was kind of sarcastic about my neighbor's offer too, and man, what I'm getting at, the reason I'm kind of making that a big point is because today's kind of lesson is love is not rude. So we're going through in our lesson book, because it's been a while, hasn't it, since we've had a Sunday school lesson, the book, The Love Dare. And it was based on that, it was from that movie, Fireproof, right, Brother Sonny? Fact checker. Fireproof, and it's basically a story about a man and his wife. They're struggling in their marriage, and so he decides to do this thing called the Love Dare. And so it's just it's basically a daily devotion. I've turned it into my Sunday school book for. I don't even remember how many lessons there is in it. There may be 20 lessons. Huh? Oh, there's 40 lessons. Thank you. My fact checker is on fire today. And I started reading it just to kind of get ready to teach my next lesson series, because I was kind of at a point where I wasn't sure what to do next, and we had I had gone through the whole Bible, every book in the Bible, in my teaching, preaching, Sunday school over there, Sunday school over here, slowly going through the books. So I was like, well, what do I do next? So I began praying and thinking. So I thought, well, we don't do this very often, but I thought I would do a lesson specifically on marriage and relationships. It is the adult Sunday school class. There's singles in here, and widows, and young people that haven't been married yet, some of them, but they're out of high school, come in our class. But so I'm not going to do marriage every single lesson ever, because it's more than just a married class, it's an adult class. But every once in a while, it's okay. So I felt like the Lord was leading me to do something like this. And then when I got this, and you can get this book, it's called The Love Dare, is that right? And you can get it at any Christian bookstore, Amazon, eBay, anywhere. It's a really pretty popular book. But I encourage you to get it yourself, because in it, I got one for my married son Josh to go through with his, it's not really to go through his wife, it's just really for him. But his wife can read it too, it's not just for men. But I got it for him because you can get it either really, a little hardback, small one, probably as cheap as $5, or a little bit nicer one. It's like leather bound and stuff for $20. But in them they have journal entries and things you can enter in when you make a commitment. They say people that are successful write down their goals. Have you heard that before? In 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Is that right? Is that the right name, Brother Cindy? All right, thank you. One of those is people write down their goals that are successful. So if you really want to change or really want to do something right, that's a good plan. So I encourage you to go out and get that. They might even have them at retailers like Walmart and stuff like that. But anyways, just immediately as I started reading through the very first chapter, saw things in my marriage, in my life, that I thought were really good. And I think relatively I have a really good marriage. But there are things in my behavior, my attitudes, that I realize, man, my marriage could be a lot better if I fixed this thing, if I improved in this area. And so it immediately began to be convicting to me. I thought, man, this is really good stuff. So I really like the information that our Sunday school book is given so far. So I hope you will, I say that to say that I hope you will, especially now that Sunday school has started back, use that as kind of thing. I want to be faithful to Sunday school, because I want it to help me improve my marriage, or maybe a potential future marriage if you're still single and haven't got married yet, or whatever. It can help with relationships, other kinds of relationships too. Help you just to become a better person. 1 Corinthians 13, as you know, is all about charity or love, the right kind of agape love. And we want to be better at that anyways, don't we? In all of our relationships. It will make us a better person. It will make us a better witness for Christ if they see in your life that true love. I really believe that with all my heart. And that's probably the main point, I think, of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, when you start seeing what the verse is saying. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, I am become as a sounding brass and tinkling cymbal. Well, what's somebody that speaks with the tongue of men and angels? Somebody that's a real good communicator, right? Somebody maybe also in that time, in the time of the Corinthians, somebody who was gifted with this, the gift of tongues. Then he talks about, though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge. And so somebody who's spiritually gifted, somebody who's a really good Christian. They're a good communicator, they're a good Christian. And the next one's like, though I, bestow all my goods to feed the poor and give my body to burn. Somebody who's a really good person, who would be charitable to others as far as their giving. And a big part of Jesus' ministry was telling people you need to take care of the poor, right? That's a big part of the Bible. We don't hardly think about that in these days sometimes. But anyways, you can be all those things: a great Christian, a great communicator, have a great personality that's generous and magnanimous to people, but still have no profit in your life. That all come to nothing because it's not backed by love, by true love. People can see through that, can't they? People can see through somebody that's a slick speaker, or even that maybe you're really good at reading your Bible and praying, but you don't give a crud about people, dying and going to hell. You're going to live your own life, take care of your own. That kind of is an empty spirituality if it's not back. So what I'm saying is the whole point of this is, it seems like to me that if you're not real with your love and real with your what God calls charity, your agape love in that chapter, you're not going to make much difference in this world. You're not going to have much profit in your life. And, you know, and I know I probably misquoted a little bit of that. I was working on that this morning. Brother Eugene, did you guys get very far? Joseph told me you guys had been working on it, the first Corinthians.
Linda's got far, I haven't. I've been helping her.
Well, good. And so that was one of the goals too when we started this. This is actually the 5th lesson. When we started this, we were encouraging everybody to memorize 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's one of the most beautiful chapters in the Bible. It's poetic sounding, and it kind of gives itself in little sections and bits to make lends itself a little bit easier to memorize than some other section of Scripture. And it would be good to just hide that in your heart. You know, it's just a really good scripture for that. So I'm going to encourage you once again to start back. When Brother Joe told me that they had been working on it, I thought, oh man, I haven't been working on that. You know, during this virus time, we were out of church for a while, then we were out of Sunday school for a while. I thought, I better get back at it, so I was working a little bit this morning. And I had actually memorized it once before when I went to Christian school when I was a kid. So it's kind of there in the back, rusty cobwebs of my brain. And I can feel like it's there, but I don't quite have it. So it hasn't been quite as hard to pick up as it would be if it was new. It's kind of like Portuguese. I grew up from about 2 to 10 in Brazil. So I can hear somebody speaking Portuguese and know that's Portuguese. And I can understand a few of the words they say, but it's mostly gone. But there's this sense that it's there somewhere in the back of my head. I don't know if you've ever felt that feeling before. But it's like that with 1 Corinthians 13. I need to know it in the front of my head, not in the back of my head. So we're talking today about how love is not rude. In Proverbs 27:14 says, "He that blesseth his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it shall be counted a curse to him." And as soon as I thought that, I thought, man, I remember very well Brother Joe's message on that. And it hasn't been that long. I think it was Wednesday night or something, wasn't it? Here, probably about a month or 6 weeks ago or something. Anyways, it was really fresh in my mind because he had just preached about that. I had heard that voice read that verse before, but it just really stuck out. The friend is clueless, right? He thinks he's being friendly, right? He's blessing his friend. But it was so early in the morning, nobody was ready to get up yet, and to them it wasn't a blessing, was it? Somebody being loud when you're just waking up is not a blessing, it was a curse. I just now almost said something rude, and I stopped myself. Thank you, Lord. Prayed you would help me with that. And it was something that, it wasn't about anybody in here, but a different neighbor who shall remain unnamed has a certain floodlight fixture that they just put up that shines into our windows like it's the day. It's so bright at night. So I guess I'm going to have to get some of those blackout curtains or something, because we have white shutters and light shines through them pretty good. But I didn't know they made floodlights this bright. It's very, very, very bright. And so I almost said something rude, and still sort of did, but sorry. Anyways, we thought about stopping. It's a new neighbor, and they just had some construction work done, remodeling before they moved in. It was probably, they didn't even do it, probably the folks they had remodeling their house put it up for them, and they don't even realize instead of pointing down at the yard, it's pointing right at our windows. And so what they probably meant as, hey, this is a great security idea. It probably helps our backyard stay secure too, it's brighter, but they didn't intentionally mean to shine it on somebody's window and keep them from sleeping, but it does affect your sleep a little bit. But of course, I could put up, like I said, something black over the windows and fix it easily. So it's not that big a deal, but when you're robbed of your sleep, it's particularly irritating, isn't it? Like this person that their friend woke them up early in the morning. Hi. So, but the friend, the loudmouth friend, doesn't realize that he is being a curse instead. And so, and we'll tie this in to the rest of the lesson here a little bit better. But the friend basically is being rude by waking up his friends and being clueless about how that makes people feel. And so a little later, as we get into the lesson, I'm going to skip ahead of myself. There's two main reasons why people are rude. One of them is ignorance. In the example of this friend in Proverbs 27, who woke up his friends by talking with a loud voice early in the morning. Was he just ignorant that would make them mad? Some people are like that, and we can all be like that at times, just totally clueless that what we're saying or doing is irritating other people. We didn't realize we were being like that, but then later, like I did with the last time I preached, later I said 2 or 3 things that really were mean, rude, or irritated people. And that was totally not my intention when I started. And so I have to guard my mouth, especially when I preach and teach, but all the times it gets being like that because it's easy for it to just come out. And so I was really ignorant about that. And then, after getting the lights shed on it, I was like, wow, that was kind of a wake-up call. I really need to watch my mouth. So was that friend in Proverbs 27:14, he that blessed his friend with a loud voice rising early in the morning, it shall be counted a curse to him. Was he just ignorant of how his loud voice was going to affect his friends, how they were going to react to that, how they were going to count that loud greeting? Maybe he would just say, "Good morning, everyone. Big day ahead. Want me to make breakfast?" Or "I brought you some muffins." Or he wasn't being mean, but it was counted a curse still. Was he just ignorant about how people are? Some people are genuinely like that. They didn't learn some of what we call unwritten rules in society. You know what? There's no writing. They didn't teach you in kindergarten. Okay, I don't want to be on camera. I protest. Yeah. All right. I don't even know where I was at now. So, how wide is the angle? How far can I go?
Not that far.
All right.
Over the edge, this edge.
Okay, so in kindergarten, you didn't get, or first grade, or whatever grade, you did not get a lesson saying, okay, it's a rule of our society to not wake people up with a loud voice. You don't go into people's room like your family. Obviously, you're in the same house with them, or roommates, or whatever, with a loud voice wake them up, because that won't be counted as a blessing by them. People don't like getting wake up. We're grumpy when we wake up. I remember telling Tracy, I just in the last few years have started drinking coffee in the morning. I usually just have 1 cup. But some people, they'll drink a pot of coffee before they go to work in the morning, and they're just worthless before they have their coffee. And I remember my grandma Margaret, who I was never very close to. Like I said, we were a missionary family and was raised overseas part of the time, or out west part of the time, and just got to see our grandparents occasionally growing up. So, didn't spend a lot of time with them, but especially her, I didn't get to see very, very often. But I remember her telling us kids one time, "Don't even talk to me until I've had my first cup of coffee." And now, as I'm an adult, and I do like drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, I still don't really understand that. How you could be that bad, that grumpy in the morning without your first cup of coffee, and how that little bit of caffeine you get is going to change you that much to where, okay, now I can be conversant in English. I don't understand to this day how the cup of coffee would change your behavior that much. Does anybody else feel like my grandma Margaret and be like, "You guys, leave me alone until I have my first cup"? Maybe your body is different with caffeine like my grandma's was. But that's one of I don't remember that many things about my grandma. That's my dad's mom. I don't remember very many things about her. That's one of the few things that I remember. She was not a morning person. And so if you go and wake her up and start talking real loud at her, guess what? You're probably going to get smacked on the side of the head. And sometimes we need to be smacked on the side of the head to teach us these etiquette lessons, because we don't sometimes seem to want to learn them very often. But what I'm saying is, you didn't get taught this in school. This is one of those unwritten rules of society, right? Another one I've noticed, and I've spoke about this before, is especially now, you give people social distancing, right? It's like 6 feet. And so if you stand 3 feet from somebody, there's this uncomfortable feeling in there. And I thank the Lord, it seems like the virus is kind of on its downhill side. The curve is flat, but now it seems like if on the Oklahoma website at least there's a trend line. Now the trend line seems to be going back down, and hopefully we'll be past this, amen, and we'll all be blown over. And if it comes a second wave, it won't be as bad if we just wash our hands good and, you know, have a little distancing and clean the doorknobs with alcohol, then it won't be as bad. This will be past us soon, Lord willing, hopefully. But even before you ever heard of the phrase social distancing, it was an unwritten social rule. You don't get up and stand right in somebody's face when they're talking to you. It's uncomfortable, right? If you guys know people that do that, that stand too close, doesn't it just get on your last nerve? Even, I'm talking about before the virus ever happened. I've had 2 or 3 friends in my life that do this. And what happens, they'll walk up, stand with you, you take a step back, and what do? They step forward again. And they're right up in your business. And all the time, you might not even realize what's annoying you, what's irritating you, but all of a sudden you're just really irritated. People don't like that person, do they? You know that person who you thought of when I said, do you have a friend like that? Most people don't like them, and that is exactly why they're not liked, is because they do that. Let me ask you a question. Are they ignorant of that unwritten social rule, or do they just not care because they're self-centered? And I found the 2 or 3 guys that I knew or know that did this. Hopefully they're not watching this on YouTube. All 3 of them, I don't think they were ignorant of the rule because they were told repeatedly, listen, you're standing too close. I don't want you to stand this close to me. Step back. And they kept doing it anyways. It's like they couldn't help themselves. It's because they didn't care. They were self-centered. And that's the 2 reasons that usually end up making us a rude person. Either we're completely ignorant, like this guy had no clue that waking everybody up in the morning was going to, you know, cause a negative reaction. Now, I think that seems, and that's me reading my opinion into it. Sometimes that happens, but other times that it's not that they're ignorant of it, it's that they don't care. Do not care. And sometimes that happens in our relationships. Rudeness is unnecessarily saying or doing things that are unpleasant to another person to be around. It's to act unbecoming, embarrassing, disrespectful. And if you would turn back over to 1 Corinthians 13, that's our main text for our lesson series. 1 Corinthians chapter number 13, if you look down about in the middle there, verse number 5, it says, and we're talking about charity, right? Charity doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil. So I looked up the word unseemly, and it basically means unbecoming. You know, have you ever heard of the charge you can get if you're in the military? Conduct unbecoming of an officer. It's kind of a catch-all phrase. It's not a specific thing, but anything you do that's unseemly or unbecoming of your rank, and I don't know, is that even a thing if you're not an officer, Brother Sonny? I've only heard conduct unbecoming of an officer. I don't know if it's the same if you're enlisted. Does anybody know? Brother Sonny's failing in his fact-checking job. And there's no Google Foo inside our church. It's metal. I'm thankful for that. It keeps all of our teeny boppers from Snapchatting and text messaging and their selfies to each other during church. See, that was rude. I should never have said that. I'm sorry, teenagers. I love you if you're watching. I thought they were going to be in here, and then at the last second they were snatched out from under my influence. Probably because they knew, Brother Joe knew I was going to be picking on them and mean to them. So, but that just means anything that's unseemly or some way that you're behaving that's not going to reflect, you know, creditably on your office or your position as an officer in the military. They called it conduct unbecoming, whether it's showing cowardice or, you know, I don't know. Anyways, so you could kind of almost call that conduct unbecoming in a relationship or conduct unbecoming in a marriage. When you're rude like that, it's something that's unbecoming, embarrassing, disrespectful. It could be just something simple like having a foul mouth. Something simple like poor table manners. You know, that you might chew your food. I remember, and I try not to do this, but I end up doing it every time. I try not to make quotes about stuff from Hollywood, but we used to watch I Love Lucy. I think we had all the CDs. We watched every season. For some reason, my dad hates that show. But I thought it was really funny, and it's clean. It's hard to find stuff on TV that's clean and to watch and stuff. But I remember one time, I think it was not Lucy, but her friend, was her name Alice? I remember they had that couple that we were friends with, was claiming that Lucy, whenever she chews food, makes such loud suction sounds that it sounded like a cow pulling its hoof out of mud. And that just cracked me up, that picture in my mind of how she could be that loud chewing her food. And you might have a habit, something like that, that's really irritating to your spouse. It wouldn't just take hardly anything for you to just stop doing it. They probably ask you, can you just please close your mouth when you eat, or not talk with your mouth full. We used to have this toy when we were kids, and it might bring back memories to, remember sometimes you pull a string and let go, and it would make the sound of a farm animal. Well, we had one that was manners. Did anybody ever see that one? You would point at a certain thing and pull it, and it would tell you a manner. And I remember one that me and my brother thought was so funny, we always repeated back to him. It would say, hey, don't talk with your mouth full. And that was and so me and Matt would go around all the time saying that to each other. Hey, don't talk with your mouth full. And I don't know why he said Ahab, chop. I guess that was supposed to be the sound of him talking with his mouth full. But we just thought that was so funny. I don't know why, but I'm surprised me and Matt don't still say that to each other to this day, because we just thought that was hilarious and stupid. But just, you know what, something little like that, if your spouse says, hey, can you might be annoying the tar out of them. And just a little correction on your part wouldn't take much, but you know what, sometimes it's saying things, little mean sarcastic digs. You know, it could be more than just manners or a potty mouth. You know, when I was a kid, I grew up like I said, after I was about 10, we moved back from Brazil, moved out to New Mexico to the border of the Navajo reservation. We actually had churches on the reservation, but we weren't allowed to live on it, you know, because we weren't Navajo Indians. So we usually lived in one of the little communities right on the edge of the reservation. We lived in a community called Kirtland, New Mexico. And I for the first time, went to public school. I had always been before that either Christian or homeschool. And it was a little small elementary school, and there was a mix of all different kinds of kids, you know, poor, rich, mean, nice, all different colors in New Mexico. It seems like, if I'm not mistaken, back then, and probably today, it's about a third Indian, a third Mexican, and a third white. It was pretty evenly divided racially. Out west, there's not very many black people, especially at that time. Now there's more. But when I was a kid, that was basically 1/3 each, and so it was really well mixed up racially. But the kids were, for the most part, pretty nice. It took me a little bit to adjust, mostly to the schoolwork, than the being around a bunch of kids in public school for the first time. And I remember I had this teacher named Mr. Canal, and I was not getting math at all. This is 4th grade math, like, you know, so it wasn't really too complicated, but I was struggling. And so he made me sit at the front. He gave me a desk and made me sit right here. His desk was right here. I had to sit right in front of his desk, and trying to embarrass me in front of all the other kids because I was struggling in math. And he was really mean to me, embarrassed me in front of the other kids. So one day I prayed that God would kill him. And about 4 months later, he dropped dead of a heart attack. And I carried that guilt of that with me. I still feel bad about it to this day. And I know God doesn't do that. A 4th grader prays his teacher would die. Okay, fine, you're dead. You know, God doesn't work that way. But still, I always felt kind of responsible for his death all growing up. And we got our substitute teacher who was a lot kinder to me. So I really truly believed he died because of me for a long time. And so, but for the most part, that school, I found some, you know, my best friend growing up at that school and some other pretty good friends. But then after 3 years at Grace B. Wilson Elementary, my dad bought a house in Farmington, a little bit bigger city, also pretty near the edge of the Navajo Reservation. His mom, my grandma Margaret, who I mentioned before, had passed away and left him half of the family farm, so him and his sister sold it. And he was absolutely able to afford a little bit nicer house. So we went to Farmington, and I started a new school, Hermosa Junior High. Every kid at that school was mean. every kid could cuss like a sailor. I have never been around it before or since, but man, they were all experts in cussing. And what it is was they wanted to show how cool they were, you know. And so I can cuss better than you, and I know more dirty words than you. And not, I'm using hyperbole, you know, overly exaggerated things, because not every kid was like that, but almost every kid. It was just a really mean society to get thrown into compared to my little grade school that I was in. And plus I had grown up in a foreign country and had this culture shock thing, super bashful and shy at that point. And it was like the worst 2 years of my growing up when I had to go to Hermosa Junior High. I hated it. I would at night go to bed thinking, okay, there's still 8 hours until I have to go to school. Then I'd wake up in the middle of the night, look at the clock, okay, there's still 3 more hours until I have to go. And every day I hated it. Kids were so mean, and it was like they used their mouths to try to one-up each other and say how cool they were. And to me, when I see somebody like at work come in, a customer or somebody, and they're cussing, and I don't know how many times I've had to ask people, can you not use language like that? My wife's a lady and she's standing right here. I don't know how many times I've had to ask people like that. They don't give a crud. Used to be that people would care. If you're a lady, they would talk around you that way, or if they know you're a preacher, or, you know, a Christian, they would, you know, let's not talk about that around here. Now they don't care. They're just right in your face about it, aren't they? And to me, that still shows that same thing as those kids in junior high did. They're trying to show how cool they are and how they can one-up. And, you know, when I see somebody that's cussing, they're either ignorant, and sometimes it is, or they just don't care. They're just self-centered, don't care. And it's these things, you know, that might bother your spouse. Instead of saying, well, I'm going to do it anyways because I don't care. That is not going to produce the quality of love in a good marriage the way that you want. Or whether it's manners, or whether it's saying sarcastic, kind of mean, double, you know, meanings where it could be taken one way but it's really a cut. Just being rude. It's unpleasant to them, isn't it? It's embarrassing to them. It's unbecoming of somebody that has true love to act like that. So if you're going to have a marriage or a relationship that's driven by love, you're going to be intentionally behaving in a way that is more pleasant for them to be around. Amen? And you're going to change these little behaviors. Just a few little tweaks. Stop doing this, stop that bad manner. Stop, you know, undercutting by saying these little things. Just a few little tweaks can turn that, you know, marriage that's just okay into the kind of heaven on earth marriage that it's supposed to be. There's a couple of times when it's heaven on earth, when you first fall in love and you're looking deep into each other's eyes and holding hands on those long walks, and it's all romance and everything's good. But then you get married, and then what happens? That infatuation honeymoon phase quickly ends, and now it begins to take work. Well, the kind of marriage that you actually put work into like this, this is bothering them. This is making them feel uncomfortable. They don't like this. They're giving me signs by telling me, by body language, by other kinds. They don't like this. Instead of just fixing it and say, okay, because I love you, I'm going to not be rude in this way. If you do that and do fix those things, you can have, the second way you can have the kind of marriage that's heaven on earth. It's just awesome. That you're giving and putting each other first, not cutting each other down, not saying mean things. And so we avoid doing things that frustrate or cause them discomfort. It's basically just having good manners. Just being a gentleman or a lady to each other. Whenever you allow love to change your behavior, even in these little small ways, you're going to restore an atmosphere of honor to your relationship. And you don't realize that was even gone or missing or mostly missing. So why do we sometimes act at home? We let our mean sides out, don't we? And our short temper out at home. Whenever we would never treat the next door neighbor. You see him out in the yard. Aforementioned neighbor is a lawn guru. Within about 2 weeks, I realized I was never, ever going to be able to keep up with him. Like every 4 days mowing lawn, going out there, little Mr. Miyagi clipping his bushes, and his wife gets out there. They were so incredibly good and love. Both of them love to take care of their beautiful yard. I could never do that. I'll mow it and trim once or twice a year. That's about it. It's not going to be that pretty. They were awesome at it. But I'll go out there and they're working on the yard and I'll be friendly. Hey, man, your yard is looking great. And it's the same neighbor that offered to let us stay in their cellar if a tornado comes. And it's real easy to be friendly to them, but why is it sometimes hard to be friendly like that to the person you're in a relationship with? Well, of course, you're with them all the time, right? Your real you shows up, doesn't it? But love, true love, agape love, charity, will motivate you to treat that person you're with all the time, the person that you love, better than strangers, better than neighbors, better than customers and co-workers and things like that. That'll make you so much more romantically attractive to them if you just treat them without rudeness in a way that it's not going to be ignorant, like the waking up your friends in the morning way too early, or self-centered. I don't care if if it bothers them that I stand too close to them. I don't care. If it bothers them that I chew with my mouth full or cuss or say little negative things, I don't care. That's not love. Amen. That's the empty opposite of love. The one that sounds like a brass or tinkling children. The one that says at the end of verse 2, I am nothing. The one that verse says at the end of verse 3, it profiteth me nothing. That's not the kind of marriage, the kind of relationship we want to have, is it? And so, if we look at Psalm 112:5, Psalm 112. Have I said anything rude yet, Brother Sonny, that I need to apologize for?
We're good.
Okay. You're going to have to rewatch it and edit it out. I would appreciate that. Okay. Psalm 112:5 says, a good man showeth favor and lendeth. He will guide his affairs with discretion. A person with discretion, what it calls a good man here, of course it means a good man or woman, is a person with discretion. They're going to find out what's appropriate, right? And then adjust their behavior accordingly. They're going to take the time and effort to find out, okay, what am I doing that's wrong? What have I done that's inappropriate? What have I done that's caused my friends to think my blessing was a curse or offend them? And I'm going to fix that. I'm going to become a better spouse, a better friend, a better person, and deal with those two things. Either am I totally ignorant about it, or am I just being really self-centered about it? And so whenever, a baby like Brindley is going to throw a fit and walk out on me in the middle of my lesson, that was rude. But nobody ever taught her that yet. She's too little, right? So we forgive her. I forgive you, Brindley. I hope you're enjoying your milk, Brindley. Normal people don't eat during the middle of the Sunday school lesson, Brindley. But no, we understand kids are kids, right? Babies are babies. They're not old enough to learn, things like that, so it's silly to make fun of them. I'm just exaggerating it for the sake of absurdity, just to make the point of that's forgivable, but our ignorance is a whole nother level, and that's not really forgivable to still, at the age of 48, be ignorant about how some things are going to affect those around you. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Love makes us, and the Bible says if we're a good person, we're going to have discretion. We're going to seek out the things that bother these others in our relationships and fix them. And so, ask yourself these questions. How does your spouse feel about the way you speak and act around them? Number 2, how does your behavior affect your mate's sense of worth and self-esteem? And number 3, would your husband or wife say you're a blessing or that you're condescending and embarrassing? And so, if you're thinking about all this, oh man, my spouse, they do that thing you mentioned, they have bad manners, or they say negative things, or they wake me up too early in the morning, they're ignorant, or they're self-centered, you're not getting the point of the whole lesson. This is about you. Excuse me, I'm trying to talk right now. This is about you fixing your problems with them, not you identifying their problems they need to fix, okay? And so, you wish they would quit doing a few things that bother you, but then it's time for you to stop doing the things that bother them. You fix yourself first. That's the principle of this whole entire lesson series, is to fix you first. And then by example, they'll see, hey, that's really changed, and it will help them become better too. So we're challenging you to be thoughtful and loving enough to discover the things that are bothering, frustrating, annoying your spouse, and fix them? Will you dare to be delightful? And so here are 3 guiding principles when it comes to practicing etiquette in your marriage. Number 1 is guard the golden rule. What's the golden rule? It's to treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Do we do that? That should be number 1 in our relationship with our spouse. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Number 2, no double standards. Don't treat the neighbor over here, your co-worker, the waiter at the restaurant one way, and then treat your spouse differently. That's a double standard. You treat everybody the same, even if you're with them all the time. Doesn't mean it gives you an excuse for your ugly to come out. Or if you're on YouTube preaching. The other thing is honor requests. Consider what they've already asked you before. Things they've already argued with you over, and things that bothered them that they said, I wish you would do this differently, or I wish you would fix this problem. Consider that and honor those requests. If you're in doubt, can't remember anything, like typical men, right? We can't remember anything from these past arguments. And that is true. Ladies, don't be afraid to just tell them, can you and tell them in a kind, nice way, but tell them, can you work on this problem? And ask them to honor that request. And men, if your wife do that, honor it. If it's important to them, it should be important to us. Amen. And so, this is your challenge for the week. Ask your spouse to tell you 3 things that cause him or her to be irritated or uncomfortable around you. And so you must do so without attacking them or justifying your behavior, okay? No, well, this is the reason I do that is because blah, blah, blah. Or you do that, so why can't I? No, we're not going to attack them or make it about them. We're just going to make it about ourselves and ask them from their perspective only, what's 3 things that I can fix? Things that irritate you, bother you, annoy you, rudenesses in my life that I can fix to do better. And so, and if they tell you, and they might say, well, let me think about it for a couple of hours or for a couple of days, or they might already know, I've already got 20 things written down here. Whichever way it is, I encourage you to write down that goal. These are the 3 things they asked me to do. So men, we won't forget it. Women, they might forget it too, but I think they're less likely to forget it. But whoever you are, I encourage you to write it down. These are the 3 things, or 20, whatever, that I'm going to work on to make my marriage better. And that would be using good discretion. I mean, that would be using love in your relationship. And so, I encourage you to do that, and hopefully the 3 things won't be too hard for you, amen? Life-changing. Like get a job or whatever. No, I'm just kidding. All right, we better go to the Lord in prayer. Thank you, dear Lord. We're so thankful to be in your house. I pray that you help us to be attentive and listen. We bless Brother Joe as he preaches. Help us during the psalm service to really worship you today, Lord. Lift your name up and think about the words and truly have a time of worship together. Pray to be those that couldn't be here because of illness or travel or whatever, that you bless our little church. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.